They locked me out of the office at exactly 9 a.m. No warning, no meeting, no conversation. One moment my access badge worked, the next it blinked red like I'd never belonged there at all. The security guard avoided my eyes, pretending to study his screen, while my phone buzzed with unanswered emails piling up behind a firewall I could no longer cross. I stood there in the lobby of a glass tower I'd helped build from the inside, holding a laptop bag that suddenly felt heavier than it ever had before. By 9:07, my company email was disabled. By 9:12, my calendar vanished. By 9:15, my name was removed from the internal directory. They didn't fire me face to face. They erased me. People rushed past me in tailored suits, clutching coffees, arguing about meetings I used to lead. A junior analyst I'd mentored slowed down when she saw me, confusion flickering across her face. But her manager pulled her away before she could say a word. That was when I understood this wasn't just termination. This was containment. I walked outside into the cold morning air, the city louder than usual, like it was celebrating my downfall. For 7 years, I had arrived early, left late, fixed problems no one wanted their name attached to, and protected executives who would now pretend they barely knew me. I had believed loyalty mattered. I had believed results mattered more than politics. That belief was the first mistake. My phone rang. One voicemail, HR. Due to internal restructuring, your role has been eliminated effective immediately. Please do not attempt to access company systems. Legal will contact you regarding next steps. No mention of performance. No gratitude. No acknowledgement of the fact that just 3 weeks earlier, I'd been praised in a board meeting for holding everything together during a critical quarter. They were scared. That thought settled in my chest, heavy but steady. Because people don't erase you like this unless you know something they wish you didn't. I got into my car and sat there, hands resting on the steering wheel, replaying the last 6 months in my mind. The delayed approvals, the sudden closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to anymore, the way certain numbers kept changing after I submitted reports, the way my questions were met with smiles that didn't reach anyone's eyes. I hadn't imagined it. 3 months ago, I'd been pulled into a project no one wanted public visibility on. A strategic acquisition, they'd called it. Confidential, high stakes, billion-dollar language thrown around casually like it meant nothing. I'd been chosen because I was thorough, because I noticed patterns, because I didn't miss details, and because they thought I was quiet enough to control. That deal was supposed to close quietly by the end of the year. But the deeper I went, the more inconsistencies I found. Shell entities, deferred liabilities disguised as growth, side letters no one acknowledged in meetings, but everyone pretended not to see. When I flagged concerns, I was told to focus on my lane. When I persisted, my responsibilities were slowly stripped away. Then came the silence. And now, the lockout. What they didn't know, what no one in that building knew, was that the night before, at 1:43 a.m., I had sent one final encrypted file from my personal backup drive. Not to a journalist, not to a competitor, but to a party with far more power than the executives who had just thrown me out like a liability. A party that had $1.2 billion on the line. By noon, the first phone call came in. Unknown number. I let it ring. By early afternoon, my former manager texted, "Can we talk? Urgent." By evening, the same executives who had ordered my access revoked were sitting in emergency meetings, voices raised, lawyers pacing, phones lighting up with messages they couldn't ignore. Because the deal they thought they controlled was no longer theirs to manage. And by nightfall, the truth they'd buried under layers of compliance language and executive smiles was about to surface publicly, irreversibly, and at a scale none of them were prepared for. I wasn't locked out anymore. I was holding the key. By the time the sun went down, The building I had been locked out of was no longer calm. I knew this because my phone, silent for most of the day, wouldn't stop vibrating. Missed calls from numbers I recognized instantly. Executive assistants, legal counsel, even the CEO's private line. The same people who decided I wasn't worth a conversation at 9 a.m. suddenly needed me desperately by 7 p.m. I didn't answer. Instead, I went home, made dinner, and sat at my kitchen table watching the city lights flicker on one by one. For the first time in years, my shoulders weren't tight. My mind wasn't racing to solve someone else's crisis, because the crisis had finally shifted where it belonged. At 8:12 p.m., the news alert hit. A federal regulatory body had announced a temporary suspension on a pending $1.2 billion acquisition involving my former company, citing material inconsistencies discovered during late-stage review. The language was dry, professional, but I knew exactly what it meant. Everything I had documented, every unexplained adjustment, every off-balance transaction they assumed would never be questioned. Someone had questioned it, and not just anyone. The buyers. The firm acquiring us was massive, conservative, obsessively risk-averse. The kind of organization that didn't move billions without knowing every shadow behind the numbers. They had trusted the reports they were given, until they received mine. At 8:34 p.m., my phone rang again. This time I answered. It was the CEO. His voice was different. No authority, no impatience. Just urgency wrapped in politeness. He said my name like he was reminding himself we'd once worked together. Told me there had been a misunderstanding earlier that morning. That security had acted prematurely. That my access could be restored first thing tomorrow. I let him finish. Then I said one sentence. You locked me out to protect yourselves, not the company. Silence. He tried again, this time softer. He said legal complications had arisen, that the buyer was demanding explanations, that internal reviews were being opened. He said my cooperation could help stabilize the situation. I told him the truth. I had already cooperated, just not with them. At 9:01 p.m., my former manager texted me again. We didn't know how serious this was. Please call. At 9:17 p.m., an internal memo leaked online. Employees were instructed not to speak to media. IT systems were frozen. All senior leadership meetings were postponed indefinitely. At 9:42 p.m., the acquiring firm issued a statement of their own. The deal was officially paused. Independent forensic auditors were being deployed. Liability clauses were being reviewed. Penalties were now on the table. That was when it hit them. The $1.2 billion wasn't guaranteed anymore. And neither were their jobs. The next morning, I woke up to headlines that used words like exposed, scrutiny, and unanswered questions. Financial commentators speculated about who inside the company had triggered the review. Analysts wondered how such discrepancies had gone unnoticed for so long. No one said my name. And that was exactly how I wanted it. By noon, I received an email from the acquiring firm's legal department. Direct. Respectful. They thanked me for the documentation. Confirmed receipt of my files. And then asked a question no one at my old company had ever asked me. Would you be willing to consult with us directly? Not as an employee, not as a subordinate, as an authority. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't need to rush anymore. That afternoon, 3 executives from my former company were placed on administrative leave. 2 more resigned before the end of the week. HR issued a statement about organizational realignment. Investors weren't reassured. Stock dipped. Trust eroded faster than anyone expected. People started whispering. Who knew? Who sent the information? Who saw this coming? I did. And the reason they locked me out at 9 a.m. was the same reason the deal collapsed by nightfall. They underestimated the quiet one. They mistook silence for weakness. They thought control meant deleting access instead of earning trust. 2 weeks later, I sat in a glass conference room, different city, different company, reviewing revised terms of the same acquisition. The number was smaller now. The power dynamics completely different. The people across the table listened when I spoke. They asked questions. They took notes. No one rushed me. No one locked me out. I didn't go back to my old job. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want apologies. I wanted distance. Because the truth is this: they didn't lose a deal because of me. They lost it because they built a system that depended on silence. And the moment I stopped being silent, everything they hid collapsed under its own weight. By the time they realized what I had done, it was already too late. They locked me out in the morning. By night, $1.2 billion had exposed everything.